The restaurant was alive with noise, the clinking of glasses, the steady hum of conversation, and the shuffle of footsteps moving quickly between tables. And in the middle of it all was a young waitress named Clara, balancing trays, scribbling down orders, and smiling even when her feet hurt, because that was part of her life now, a life of long shifts and small tips, a life where dreams of travel and adventure were kept safely hidden inside her heart, far away from the smell of coffee and the sound of impatient customers calling for attention. She had worked here for almost 2 years, and she knew every corner of the restaurant by memory. The tables that wobbled if you leaned on them too hard, the coffee machine that hissed like an angry cat, and the one chair near the window where the cushion always sank lower than the rest. Her hands moved quickly, almost like a dancer, as she carried plates stacked with food, and though she looked calm on the outside, she often felt a storm inside, because she wanted more than just this. She wanted to see the world she had only read about in books or watched in old travel documentaries. Every morning before coming in, she promised herself that this shift would be easy, that she would keep her energy up, but by the time the evening rush came, she was already tired, the ache in her legs climbing higher with each step, the polite smile on her face sometimes threatening to fall away. Yet she never let it, she kept it there, because the customers didn't care about her exhaustion, they only cared about their food arriving hot and their drinks being refilled on time. On this particular evening, the restaurant was even busier than usual. A Friday night crowd filling the air with laughter, loud talk, and the occasional sound of silverware clattering to the floor. Clara had been running from table to table without pause, her ponytail bouncing as she leaned over to listen carefully to each order. She wrote quickly, checked twice, and always said thank you, because she believed kindness was the only way to survive in a job where impatience was a daily guest. She stopped at a table of 4 tourists, and when one of them struggled with the menu, she crouched down slightly, her voice soft and calm. She explained the dishes in simple English, pointing to the pictures, and then hurried away to grab their drinks. Her coworkers often teased her for being too nice, saying she took too much time with people, but Clara never minded. She thought that being patient was worth it, even if it slowed her down, because maybe, just maybe, a little kindness could brighten someone's evening. Her manager walked past, nodding in approval as Clara balanced 3 plates on her arm, slipping between tables with grace. She had learned long ago that waitressing was not just about serving food. It was about reading people, knowing when to approach and when to leave them alone, sensing if someone wanted to talk or preferred silence. And though she did it well, she sometimes wondered if this skill was being wasted here, in a place where her name was just printed on a small badge pinned to her apron. As the clock ticked toward the busiest hour, Clara felt her chest tighten. She had 8 tables at once, and each one seemed to be calling her name. A child spilled water, a couple waved for the check, another asked for extra bread, and through it all she kept moving, her sneakers squeaking slightly on the tiled floor, her heart beating faster as she tried to keep everyone satisfied. She thought to herself, just a few more hours, just hold on a little longer, then you can rest. Yet even in the middle of this storm of activity, her mind drifted to places far away. She imagined walking down the streets of Paris, hearing French voices all around her, tasting pastries fresh from a bakery. She imagined visiting the art museums she had studied in her free time, standing in front of the paintings she had only ever seen online. Sometimes the dreams felt so strong that she wondered if they were real memories of another life, a better life waiting for her somewhere across the ocean. But the dream always faded when a customer snapped their fingers or called out, "Miss, excuse me," pulling her back into the present, into the small restaurant with its buzzing lights and sticky floors, into the world she had to face every day. Her apron pocket filled with pens and small slips of paper, not plain tickets or postcards, only the tools of her routine. She sighed quietly but kept smiling, because no one needed to see the weariness that pressed on her shoulders like an invisible weight. Her co-workers moved around her, some working quickly, others taking shortcuts. One of them whispered about ending the shift early. Another complained about a rude customer. But Clara stayed focused. She didn't want to lose her balance. She wanted to do her job well, even if no one truly noticed, and sometimes, when she stood by the counter waiting for food to be ready, she would stare at the door, wondering if anything surprising could ever walk through it, or if her days would always look the same. Tonight felt no different at first. just another ordinary shift filled with rushing, smiling, and hiding the ache in her body. But something inside her whispered that life can change without warning, that the smallest moments often carry the biggest turns. She did not know it yet, but among the many faces in the crowd of diners, someone was watching, someone who would soon take her ordinary evening and turn it into the beginning of a story she could never have imagined. A story that would carry her far away from this restaurant, far away from the endless shifts, into a world where her dreams might finally meet reality. The evening moved forward with the same rhythm, plates clattering, voices rising and falling like waves, Clara moving from table to table with her careful balance of speed and patience. She thought it would be just another set of faces, another mix of tired workers, laughing couples, and hungry tourists. But at one particular table, something was different, and it began with a small confusion over the menu. A man sat with his wife, both looking around nervously, their eyes falling on the long list of dishes they clearly could not fully understand. Clara noticed the way the woman leaned toward her husband, whispering in a language that sounded familiar. And when the man tried to ask a question in broken English, Clara realized what it was: French, a language she had studied in school and kept alive by reading books and watching films late at night when she could not sleep. She leaned in closer, her smile warm, and without hesitation. She answered them in fluent French, her voice soft but confident. The couple's faces instantly lit up with surprise. The husband's eyes widened, the wife's mouth opened in delight, and they both started speaking faster, relieved to be understood. The words spilled out like water, asking about dishes, ingredients, even about the best dessert to try, and Clara kept up with them, answering each question with ease, her hands gesturing lightly, her tone polite but friendly. The moment felt different. It was as if the restaurant had faded around her, the loud clattering of forks and the echo of laughter becoming distant. She felt herself step into another world, the world she often dreamed about, where she could use her language skills, where she was more than just a waitress balancing trays. In those minutes she was a guide, a bridge between cultures, someone who carried a secret gift that was suddenly useful, and it gave her a glow she didn't even realize was spreading across her face. Other customers noticed, heads turned, not because they understood the words, but because of the rhythm, the way Clara spoke with ease, her tone filled with warmth and elegance. People who had been busy with their meals paused for a moment, listening to the melody of French rolling through the air. It was not something you often heard in this little restaurant, and for a few seconds, the atmosphere shifted, like a spotlight had quietly appeared on the young waitress without her knowing. The French couple laughed softly, relaxed now, no longer strangers struggling in an unfamiliar place. The husband even told her, in French, that it felt like a miracle to meet someone who spoke their language so well, and Clara, though her cheeks flushed pink, simply nodded and said it was her pleasure. She recommended a dish she thought they would like, explained how it was cooked, and for the first time that day, she felt alive, as if she was doing more than just carrying plates. She was sharing a piece of herself. Behind the counter, one of her co-workers raised an eyebrow, whispering to another, "Since when does Clara speak French?" They were curious but also impressed, because in all the long hours of work, no one had seen this side of her. Most people only knew her as the quiet, reliable server who never complained and never caused problems. But here was Clara, holding an entire table's attention, speaking with confidence and charm, making the restaurant feel like a different place entirely. The manager, passing by, even slowed his steps, his head turning toward her. He didn't interrupt, but he noticed too, the way the couple smiled at her, the way she carried herself with such grace. For once, Clara wasn't just another name on the shift schedule. She was something special, even if no one could yet imagine how far that moment would take her. As Clara walked back to the kitchen to place their order, she felt lighter than before, almost as if her tired feet had forgotten the pain. Inside, she carried a spark of pride, a reminder that she was more than the apron she wore, more than the long hours she spent rushing through crowded aisles. She thought to herself that maybe, just maybe, the dreams she held inside weren't foolish after all, because here she was, using a part of herself that mattered, and it made a difference to someone. When she returned to their table with the drinks, the couple thanked her again, switching back and forth between English and French, and she laughed gently, telling them it was fine to speak whichever they preferred. She even shared a short story about how she first learned the language, how she practiced with old tapes and scribbled notes when she was younger. The couple listened with genuine interest, nodding, their eyes shining with respect, as if they had discovered a treasure hidden inside. The walls of an ordinary restaurant. All around them, the restaurant carried on, waiters rushing, food sizzling, glasses clinking. But for Clara, it felt as though something invisible had shifted. She didn't know it yet, but her words, her kindness, and her simple choice to speak in French had reached more than just the couple. Someone else was listening quietly, without saying a word. Someone who would carry that moment with them long after the plates were cleared, and that someone was about to change everything. For now, though, Clara only felt the warmth of connection, the joy of knowing she had made two people feel at home in a foreign place. She walked away from their table with her heart a little fuller, not realizing that she had just stepped into the very first thread of a story that would soon pull her life in an extraordinary direction. A story that had already begun, though she could not yet see its shape. The restaurant carried on with its usual noise, waiters rushing from one corner to another, plates sliding across tables, glasses filled with wine catching the soft yellow glow of the hanging lights. And in the middle of all this life was Clara, still smiling as she moved between customers, her voice calm, her steps quick, and her mind busy keeping track of orders and faces. But just a few feet away from her, sitting quietly at another table, someone was watching closely, someone who noticed more than most. At a table near the window sat a man dressed simply but elegantly, a dark suit that seemed almost too fine for this ordinary restaurant. His shoes polished, his tie perfectly in place. He did not draw attention to himself with loud laughter or gestures. He simply sat, eating slowly, his eyes calm and observant. His presence carried a quiet weight, though no one around him seemed to realize it. He was the kind of man who could be invisible in plain sight, if he chose to be. This man had come alone, and he preferred it that way. His life was full of meetings, interviews, conferences, and rooms where people whispered his name with respect or curiosity. But here, in this small restaurant, he could enjoy a simple meal without anyone expecting anything from him. No cameras, no microphones, just food and silence. Yet tonight, something unusual caught his attention. Not the dish in front of him, but the voice of a young waitress speaking fluent French at the table beside him. At first, he only glanced, curiosity pulling his eyes toward her. He had heard the couple struggling with English earlier, their words broken, their faces slightly tense, but then the waitress's voice rose, clear and smooth, carrying the soft rhythm of French, and immediately the atmosphere at that table changed. The couple's faces brightened. Their hands moved with excitement. Their voices danced with relief. It was such a small moment, yet it carried so much power, the kind of moment that revealed character more than anything else could. The man watched carefully, not in a way that would disturb anyone, but with the steady gaze of someone trained to notice details. He saw the way Clara leaned in, respectful but kind, never rushing them even though the restaurant was busy. He saw the way her smile wasn't forced, the way her words flowed naturally as if she had been waiting all day for this chance. He noticed the light in her eyes, the spark of joy that came not from tips or praise, but from the simple happiness of connecting with another human being. As he cut another piece of his meal, he thought about how rare that was, to find someone who gave such effort to strangers. Most people moved quickly, doing the least required, saving their energy. But this young woman gave more even when no one was watching, even when her manager and co-workers were too busy to care, and it struck him, not because he needed a waitress who could speak French, but because he valued something deeper. He valued authenticity, kindness, and the courage to bring a hidden skill into the light. Clara, of course, had no idea. She moved back and forth, her arms full of plates, her mind occupied with tasks. When she glanced at his table, she only saw another customer, polite but quiet, someone who nodded slightly when she asked if everything was fine. She didn't linger, she didn't recognize him. She couldn't have known that the man eating alone was a billionaire, a businessman who had built his empire from nothing, someone who could change a life with a single decision. To her he was just another face in the crowd, and maybe that was why he found her so genuine. The billionaire, though hidden behind his calm expression, felt something stir inside him. He remembered moments from his own past, days when he had been young, unknown, working jobs where people rarely saw him for who he really was. He remembered the weight of dreams carried silently, the hunger for a chance, and as he listened to Clara's voice drifting through the air, he wondered how many others like her were out there, hidden talents, invisible gifts, waiting for the right moment, the right person to notice. Other customers nearby returned to their meals, the short spark of curiosity gone. But the man did not. His eyes remained steady, his thoughts running deeper with every word Clara spoke. It wasn't just her language that impressed him. It was the way she made people feel, the way she carried dignity in a job where many forgot to keep it. And though he didn't show it, though he finished his meal like any ordinary man, inside he was already considering something, a thought that began as a whisper, but grew stronger with every passing minute. Clara passed by again, checking his table quickly, her smile brief but sincere. She asked softly if everything was fine, and he nodded with a polite thank you. Nothing more, nothing less. She hurried on, her mind already pulled by another order, another task, and she never noticed the quiet intensity in his eyes, never guessed that he was memorizing that small moment of kindness, saving it like a seed that would later bloom into something extraordinary. The billionaire leaned back in his chair, his fingers resting lightly on the folded napkin beside his plate. He was not a man easily moved. Years of power and wealth had taught him to be cautious, to measure people carefully, yet tonight, in this unremarkable restaurant, a simple waitress had managed to catch his attention in a way no boardroom executive or polished speech could, and he decided, almost without realizing it, that he would not leave this place without leaving something behind. Something more than a tip, something that might open a door for her just as she had opened a door for that couple with her kindness. For now, he remained still, finishing the last bites of his meal, his expression calm, his presence unnoticed, but in his mind, the plan was already forming, a quiet decision taking root, one that would change Clara's life forever, though she continued to move around the restaurant unaware, thinking it was just another ordinary evening, while just a few feet away, destiny was quietly watching, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Clara moved quickly between the tables, her arms full of plates, her mind busy with small details, making sure the drinks were refilled, the orders were correct, the children had their straws, the couples had their wine, and all the while her smile never faded even though her legs ached from hours of running back and forth. To her, this was simply another shift, another long evening where her kindness was tested by impatience, by loud voices, by endless requests. She did not imagine for a moment that someone important was watching her every move. At the corner table by the window, the man in the dark suit still sat, eating slowly, observing quietly, his expression calm, almost unreadable. Clara only approached him as she would any other customer, polite and efficient. She leaned slightly, asked softly if his food was fine, if he needed anything more, and when he simply nodded and thanked her in a low voice, she smiled once again and left, unaware of the weight of the eyes that followed her for a brief second before returning to the plate. To her, he was just another guest, maybe a businessman tired from his day, someone who wanted to be left alone. Clara never saw the subtle things he noticed, the way she crouched slightly when speaking to a child so they would not feel small, the way she bent down to pick up a spoon someone had dropped without waiting to be asked, the way she listened with real patience to an elderly woman asking endless questions about the soup. She did all of these things naturally, without looking for reward, because in her heart she believed that if she had the power to make someone's day a little easier, then it was worth it, even if it meant more work for her. The billionaire admired this quietly, though no one would have guessed it from his calm face. He was used to people trying hard to impress him, to flatter him, to treat him differently once they recognized who he was. But here, he was invisible, just a quiet man having dinner, and he liked it that way because it allowed him to see the truth in others, and what he saw in Clara was something rare, something that could not be bought or faked. She had grace, she had patience, and most of all she had heart. The evening rush grew heavier, more people coming in, the sound of laughter rising, chairs scraping against the floor, waiters hurrying past with trays stacked high, and Clara felt the weight of it all pressing on her shoulders. Yet she carried on, slipping between tables, balancing dishes, repeating orders, always careful not to let her smile break. Even when her body longed for rest, when she passed by the quiet man's table again, she barely noticed him. She asked once more if he needed anything. He said no, his voice steady, and she moved on quickly to another call for help. To her, he was nothing more than a polite customer, but inside, the man thought deeply about what he had seen. He thought about how many young people like Clara worked so hard, carrying hidden gifts that no one noticed, and he thought about his own journey, the days when no one believed in him, when all he had was effort and determination. Perhaps that was why he felt drawn to her. Perhaps that was why he decided, even without speaking to her much, that he would not let this evening pass without leaving something behind, a gesture that could remind her that life could change in unexpected ways. Clara's co-workers didn't see what was happening either. They teased each other, complained about rude customers, joked about tips, but none of them noticed the quiet attention at the corner table. They only saw Clara moving as usual, calm, helpful, reliable. Nothing about her seemed different. But the truth was that every small act she gave, every smile, every moment of patience, was building an invisible bridge toward the man who sat nearby. A bridge she didn't know existed. When she paused near the counter to catch her breath, she thought about her dreams again, as she often did in small moments of rest. She thought about traveling, about standing in places she had only read about. She thought about speaking French in Paris, not just in a small restaurant to a couple of tourists. And the thought made her heart ache, because dreams always felt far away when she was wiping tables and writing orders. She pushed the thoughts aside, telling herself she must stay focused because tonight's work was not yet done. Meanwhile, the billionaire dabbed his mouth with the napkin. His meal nearly finished, his decision quietly forming. He was not a man who made choices lightly, but when he saw something genuine, he knew, and tonight he knew that he wanted to encourage this young woman. Not because he pitied her, but because he respected her, because he saw something that reminded him of himself long ago, someone with talent hidden under routine, someone with more to offer the world than just serving meals. Clara continued her shift unaware, answering calls, carrying trays, clearing empty plates, moving so fast she barely noticed the minutes ticking away. To her, the evening would end with tired feet and a small paycheck, but at the corner table, destiny had already started writing a new page, a page she could not see, a page that would surprise her soon, because while she believed it was only another ordinary shift, the truth was that this was the night everything would begin to change. And all because of the man she thought was just another quiet customer. The restaurant buzzed on, no one paying attention, no one realizing that a simple waitress and a billionaire had already crossed paths in a way that would soon matter. But the air seemed to hold something invisible, like the calm before a storm, or the pause before a new story begins. Clara moved through it unaware, while at the window, the man set down his fork, his eyes still thoughtful, already planning the next small step he would take before he walked out into the night. The night was moving toward its closing hours, the sound of laughter softening, the clatter of plates beginning to slow, and the crowd in the restaurant slowly thinning out. Clara felt the weight in her legs grow heavier, each step reminding her how long she had been on her feet. Yet she kept her smile steady, because the shift was almost done, and she told herself she could rest soon. She moved from one table to another, clearing glasses, stacking plates, and wiping crumbs, her thoughts already drifting to the comfort of her small bed at home. At the corner table by the window, the man in the dark suit had quietly finished his meal. He had eaten without fuss, without drawing attention, paying close attention to no one but her, though she never realized it. When he stood up, he adjusted his jacket, slipped his wallet from his pocket, and placed a payment inside the small folder, but along with the usual bill, he added something else, something folded neatly, something that carried more weight than Clara could possibly imagine. In that moment, he looked around once, calm and discreet, then walked out without a sound, blending into the night like he had never been there. Clara, still busy with other tables, didn't notice him leave. She was carrying 2 heavy trays toward the kitchen, her co-workers joking and chatting as they moved beside her. She only noticed later, when she returned to his table, expecting nothing unusual. Her hands reaching for the plates and the glass, she moved quickly, her mind thinking of how much still needed to be done before closing, and then her eyes fell on the small folded note resting on the table, her name written carefully on the outside. She paused, surprised, because most customers never left personal notes, sometimes a quick thank you scribbled on the bill, but not something like this. She looked around to see if the man was still nearby, but he was gone, the chair empty, the window showing only the dark street outside. Curiosity pulled her fingers toward the paper. She opened it slowly, her heart beating faster without knowing why, and as she read the words inside, her breath caught in her throat. The note was short, but every word carried weight. It thanked her for her kindness, for her patience, for her gift of making strangers feel welcome. It told her that talent should never be wasted, that her skills and her heart were worth more than she believed, and at the bottom was a name she recognized faintly, one she had seen once or twice in news articles about wealth and business. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the paper, because this was not just any man. This was someone powerful, someone real, someone who had noticed her. But it wasn't only the note that left her stunned, for as she unfolded the paper further, something else slipped out, a thin envelope, and inside it was a plain ticket, real, official, printed with her name. A ticket to Paris, the very city she had always dreamed of. The letters blurred for a moment as her eyes widened in disbelief. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought others might hear it. She whispered to herself that it must be a mistake. It couldn't be real. Who would leave such a gift for a waitress? And yet the paper in her hands told her otherwise. Her co-workers noticed her standing frozen by the table, the note trembling in her fingers. One of them leaned over and asked what it was, and when she showed them, their mouths fell open, laughter and shock mixing together. One said it had to be a prank. Another said no prank could be this detailed. The ticket was too real, the printing too perfect. They crowded around her, whispering and gasping, while Clara herself felt her legs weaken, forcing her to sit for a moment before she dropped the precious papers. Her mind spun with questions. Why her? Why tonight? What had she done to deserve this? She thought of the French couple she had helped, of the simple way she had spoken kindly, of the ordinary moments that had filled her shift, and she realized she hadn't done anything extraordinary. Not in her eyes, she had only been herself, yet somehow that had been enough for someone else to see something more in her, something worth rewarding, something worth believing in. She read the note again, slowly this time, her eyes lingering on the words about not wasting her gift, about having more to offer than she imagined. She clutched it to her chest for a moment, the paper softening under her fingers. She wanted to believe it, yet part of her still feared it was too good to be true. People like her didn't get miracles. People like her worked long hours, counted every coin, and dreamed quietly without expecting those dreams to come true. And yet, here in her hand, was a door she had never expected to open. The other waiters went back to their work, still whispering about it, but Clara stayed quiet, her thoughts racing faster than her steps. She tucked the note and ticket safely into her apron, afraid someone might take them, afraid she might wake up and find them gone, as if they were only part of a strange dream. She finished the last of her shift in a daze, moving automatically, her heart somewhere else entirely, replaying the sight of the man at the window, wondering why she had not looked closer, why she had not spoken more. When the restaurant finally closed, Clara walked out into the night, the cool air brushing her face, her hand still clutching the folded note like a secret treasure. The street around her looked the same, the world looked the same, but inside she felt different, as if a new story had quietly begun without her noticing. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know if she would find the courage to use the ticket, but she knew one thing: life had just placed a choice in front of her. A choice she had never expected. A choice she could not forget. The note's words echoed in her mind as she walked home. The idea that talent should not be wasted. That perhaps she was meant for something greater than long shifts and tired smiles. The thought both scared her and gave her hope, because for the first time, she felt seen, not as a waitress carrying plates, but as a person with a spark waiting to be lit. She held the paper close, whispering a quiet thank you into the empty night, knowing that this small folded note had changed everything, even if she didn't yet understand how much. Clara sat at the back corner of the restaurant after her shift, her apron still tied around her waist, her hands gripping the folded paper as if it might disappear if she let go for even a moment. She had read the note again and again, and each time her heart pounded harder. She unfolded the envelope once more, her eyes landing on the plain ticket, the shining letters spelling Paris, the very city she had dreamed of since she was a child. And yet her mind kept whispering, this cannot be real, it has to be a mistake, maybe even a cruel joke. Her co-workers gathered around her, curious like children. One of them snatched the ticket from her hand for a closer look, running a finger across the print, squinting at the date and name. This is real, he muttered, shaking his head. It has your name on it, Clara? Another leaned in, whispering, but who would give you something like this and why? Their voices blended together, half shocked, half envious. One laughed nervously and said, "Maybe he's crazy, rich people do strange things," while another suggested, "Or maybe he just saw something in you that none of us did." Clara stayed silent, her mind spinning too fast to form words. She wanted to believe them. She wanted to believe the ticket was not just a piece of paper, but a doorway, a chance to live the dream she had whispered to herself in the quiet of her room. But fear clawed at her chest. What if it wasn't real? What if she showed up at the airport and they laughed at her? What if she was being set up for disappointment? She pressed the note against her heart, trying to steady her breathing, trying to hold on to the feeling that maybe, just maybe, it was true. As the night stretched on, the restaurant emptied, chairs stacked on tables, the lights dimmed. Her co-workers left one by one, still talking about what had happened, but Clara lingered, unable to move, her body heavy with exhaustion but her mind wide awake. She opened the note again, reading the line about her talent not being wasted. The words were simple, yet they sank deep into her heart, because no one had ever said something like that to her. Not her family, not her teachers, not anyone. It was as if a stranger had seen the part of her she kept hidden, the part that longed to be more. Walking home under the quiet streetlights, she clutched the papers tightly, her shoes clicking softly against the pavement, the night air cool against her skin. Every step felt unreal, like she was moving through a dream. She kept glancing down at the ticket, making sure it hadn't vanished. She whispered to herself, "Why me, why now?" Her chest tight with confusion, her thoughts bouncing between disbelief and hope. She thought about the man in the suit, how calm he had looked, how he hadn't seemed like the kind of person to play games, and she wondered if she had missed something in his eyes, some sign of what he had planned. When she reached her small apartment, she sat on the bed without turning on the light, the city's glow slipping through the window. She spread the ticket across her lap, tracing the letters with her finger. Her heart caught between excitement and fear. She thought of Paris, the language she loved, the museums she dreamed of visiting, the cobblestone streets she had seen in photographs. And then she thought of the risks, leaving her job, leaving her routine, stepping into a world where she had no safety net, no one to guide her. The thought was overwhelming yet thrilling. The next morning, she woke with the ticket still on her bedside table, the sunlight falling across it like a spotlight, as if the universe was reminding her that it was real. She picked it up again, half expecting the print to fade, but it stayed sharp, her name still there, her destination still written clearly. Her doubts returned, but so did the spark of excitement in her chest. She carried the note in her apron pocket when she returned to the restaurant, touching it secretly throughout the day as if to remind herself it wasn't just a dream. Her co-workers teased her lightly, some saying she was the luckiest waitress in the world, others muttering that they didn't trust gifts that seemed too good to be true. But Clara smiled quietly, saying little, because inside she was fighting a storm, one moment believing, the next moment doubting. She couldn't ignore the truth that the man's name was real, that he was known for his wealth and his influence. She searched his name later in the evening, and found news articles about his business, his charities, his quiet generosity, and the more she read, the more she realized this was not a joke. This was something intentional, something meant for her. Still, the fear did not leave her. She worried about stepping into a plane alone, worried about what awaited her on the other side, worried that her life would change too quickly. But she also worried about something else, the thought that if she ignored this gift, if she let fear hold her back, she would regret it forever. The ticket burned in her pocket like a secret flame, daring her to make a choice, daring her to believe that she was worthy of something greater than long shifts and tired smiles. As the week went on, she found herself daydreaming more often. In the middle of taking orders, in the middle of cleaning tables, her mind would drift to Paris, to the language, to the idea of standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, her heart racing at the thought, and each time, she touched the folded note, hearing again the words that told her not to waste her gift, and little by little, the fear began to soften, replaced by a quiet determination, a whisper inside her telling her that maybe this was not just luck, maybe this was destiny. At night, lying awake, she replayed the man's quiet face in her mind, the way he had looked at her briefly when she asked about his meal, the calm nod, the polite thank you, nothing more, nothing less. And yet he had seen her. He had chosen her, and now she had to decide whether she was brave enough to step into the unknown. She clutched the ticket close, her eyes closing slowly, her lips whispering a promise to herself that she would not let fear win. Even if she was trembling, even if she was uncertain, she would find the courage to believe in the gift she had been given. And so, the ticket waited, resting safely in her hands. A simple piece of paper with the power to change everything. While Clara carried on with her days, her heart beating faster each time she looked at it, knowing deep down that her life would never be the same again. Because one man had left more than a note. He had left her a choice, and that choice was now hers to make. She sat at her small kitchen table late at night, the glow of her phone lighting her tired face, typing the name she had seen at the bottom of the note. And there it was, page after page of information, news articles about companies, interviews about business success, photographs of the same man she remembered sitting at the window table. The calm eyes, the quiet presence, always dressed neatly, always described as a billionaire who valued hard work and simplicity. Clara scrolled through each line with wide eyes, her hand covering her mouth as the truth sank deeper. The man had not been an ordinary customer. He had been real, powerful, and far beyond anything she had ever known. Still, her mind resisted believing. Maybe the note was a trick. Maybe someone had forged his name. She searched more, reading stories of his quiet generosity, of scholarships he had funded, of strangers he had helped in unexpected ways. He was not the kind of man who needed attention. He preferred to act silently, and the more she read, the more her doubts began to shift into a trembling hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was his way of helping her, of giving her a chance she would never have reached on her own. At work, she found it hard to concentrate. Trays slipped in her hands, orders blurred on the page, her co-workers teased her, saying her head was no longer in the restaurant but already flying to Paris. She laughed nervously, but inside she still battled with fear. She told them she hadn't decided yet. She told herself she might never decide, because the thought of leaving everything behind frightened her as much as it thrilled her. She had lived her whole life inside the safety of routine. Stepping beyond it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff with no one to catch her. At night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of that evening. The sound of her French words, the smile on the couple's faces, the calm nod of the man in the suit. She remembered how ordinary it had all felt, and yet it had led to this extraordinary moment. She whispered to herself in the dark, "Why me? And sometimes, what if I fail?" Her chest tightening with the weight of the unknown, because Paris was not just a city. It was a dream too large, too heavy, something she wasn't sure she deserved. Her doubts grew stronger when she thought of practical things. What about her job? What about rent? What about her family who would think she was being reckless? What if she used the ticket and returned empty-handed, embarrassed, with nothing to show but wasted time? She argued with herself silently, one moment convincing herself she should go, the next moment convincing herself she should stay, her heart and her mind pulling in opposite directions until she felt exhausted. But then, on a quiet afternoon, she sat at the park on her break, the ticket in her lap, the words from the note running through her head. Talent should not be wasted. She repeated them softly, letting them sink into her heart, and she thought about all the years she had hidden her love for languages, all the hours she had spent practicing in private, all the nights she had dreamed of walking foreign streets. Maybe the man had seen something in her that she had been too afraid to see in herself. Maybe he had wanted her to remember that dreams are not foolish if you are brave enough to chase them. She looked around the park at the ordinary lives moving past, parents with strollers, teenagers laughing, workers eating sandwiches on benches, and she wondered how many of them carried hidden dreams too, dreams they never spoke about, dreams that stayed trapped inside, and she felt a sudden ache in her chest. What if she let hers stay hidden forever? What if she wasted the only chance she would ever get? The thought made her tremble, not with fear but with urgency, as if the universe was telling her that she could not let this pass. The decision still frightened her, but little by little, the doubt began to break, replaced by a fragile courage. She imagined herself standing at the airport, her bag packed, the ticket clutched in her hand. She imagined the plane lifting into the sky, carrying her toward a life she had only seen in dreams, and for the first time, she let herself smile fully, The kind of smile that came not from serving others, but from believing in her own future. Her co-workers noticed the light in her face, though she said nothing, keeping the decision safe in her heart until she was ready. That night, she placed the note and the ticket on her bedside table again, the moonlight falling across them like a blessing. She whispered a quiet thank you into the silence, not just to the man who had given her the gift, but to herself, for daring to believe in it, for daring to imagine more, and as she closed her eyes, she felt peace for the first time in days, because she knew what she would do. She would take the chance, she would go to Paris, even if she was afraid, because fear could not be stronger than the dream she had carried for so long. The next morning, Clara woke with a sense of purpose. She folded the note carefully, slipped the ticket back into the envelope, and tucked them both into her bag. Her steps felt lighter, her smile more natural. She did not have to tell anyone yet, but deep inside she knew. The choice had been made. She was going, and nothing would stop her now. The morning of her flight arrived faster than Clara had expected. The days leading up to it had passed in a blur of nervous energy. She packed and unpacked her small suitcase several times, folding clothes, refolding them, checking the ticket again and again as if the letters might fade if she stopped looking. Her heart was caught between excitement and fear, beating fast each time she imagined stepping onto the plane. She had never been outside her country before, never even taken a flight that went further than a few hours, and now here she was, holding a ticket that would take her across the ocean. She woke before the sun, her apartment quiet, the world outside still wrapped in darkness. She sat on the edge of her bed for a long time, staring at the envelope that lay on her nightstand, the note still folded carefully inside. She picked it up, her fingers trembling, reading the words one more time. Talent should not be wasted. Those words gave her courage when fear tried to creep in. They reminded her that this journey was not just about a place. It was about believing in herself. It was about daring to step beyond the life she had settled into. Her bag was small, just enough for clothes, a few books, and a notebook she carried everywhere. The notebook where she had once written little phrases in French, copying lines from films and books, her secret practice, her dream written on paper. She slipped it carefully into her bag, telling herself that soon she would write new words in it. Not from imagination but from real streets, real voices, real moments. The taxi ride to the airport felt unreal. The city she knew so well passing by the windows, streetlights flickering, familiar shops and corners blurring past. Clara pressed her forehead to the glass, whispering goodbye silently, not knowing when she would return, not knowing what awaited her. She felt small and brave all at once, her hands gripping the ticket tightly, as if letting go would break the magic. At the airport, she stood in long lines, her eyes wide with the rush of travelers, families saying goodbye, children tugging on suitcases, business people hurrying with phones pressed to their ears. She felt out of place, as if she did not belong in this world of movement. But when it was her turn, she handed over her ticket, and the attendant smiled politely, scanning it without hesitation. No questions, no problems. The paper was real. The journey was real. Clara let out a breath she hadn't realized she had been holding, her fear melting just a little. Walking through the terminal, she glanced at the enormous windows showing planes waiting like giant birds ready to take flight. She imagined herself on one of them, imagined the moment it would lift into the sky. Her stomach fluttered, but she kept moving, following the signs. Her steps steady even though her heart was racing. When she reached her gate, she sat quietly, staring at the people around her, some excited, some bored, some already asleep. She wondered if any of them knew how much this moment meant to her, how much it had taken to reach this point. When her flight was called, she rose slowly, her legs shaky, walking down the long tunnel that led to the plane. She ran her fingers across the walls as if to remind herself it was real. Stepping into the narrow aisle, finding her seat, buckling the belt across her lap, she sat still. Her hands folded in her lap, her mind spinning, the hum of voices around her fading into the background. When the plane began to move, her heart climbed into her throat. And as it lifted off the ground, as the city lights grew smaller and smaller beneath her, she felt tears blur her vision. She was leaving everything behind, and yet, for the first time, she felt free. The long hours passed with her staring out the small window, watching clouds drift by, sunlight turning them gold. then fading into night again. She thought about the man at the restaurant, the quiet customer who had seen her. She whispered thank you to him though he could not hear, promising herself that she would not waste the gift, that she would live it fully, not with fear but with gratitude. She thought about all the moments that had led her here, every smile, every tired step, every dream she had hidden, and now all of it had carried her into the sky. When the plane finally landed, and she stepped into the bright, bustling airport of Paris, the sounds of French voices filled the air around her. Not just from books or films but real, living, flowing voices. She froze for a moment, her eyes wide, her heart swelling. The dream she had carried for so long was no longer a dream. It was reality. She was here, standing on the ground she had thought she would never reach, the city she had whispered about in secret now waiting for her beyond the glass doors. She walked slowly, her suitcase rolling behind her, the note and ticket still safe in her bag. The streets of Paris calling to her with their music, their language, their promise of new beginnings. The air smelled different, alive with bread and coffee. The sound of footsteps on cobblestone streets echoing like a song. Clara lifted her face to the sky, smiling, tears in her eyes, because she knew this was not the end of her story. This was the first page of a new chapter. For a moment, she stood still, closing her eyes, hearing the words again. Talent should not be wasted. And she whispered back, I will not waste it. Her voice trembling but strong. She promised herself that she would embrace whatever came next. She would walk through the city not as a waitress carrying plates, but as a woman carrying her own dreams, ready to see where they might take her. And so, Clara took her first step into Paris, her heart full of fear and wonder. Her life forever changed by a single evening, a single act of kindness, a single note left on a table by a man she had barely spoken to. She knew she might never see him again, but she carried his gift not only in her bag but in her soul, a reminder that sometimes the smallest moments can open the biggest doors, and that even in the middle of an ordinary shift, destiny can be sitting quietly at the next table, waiting to surprise you with a note and a journey that will change your life forever.